Hello everyone, welcome to my channel Learn Biology with Pravina. Myself Pravin Lakshmi, PGT Biology. Today in this video we are going to discuss chapter 1 of your NCERT Sexual Reproduction in Flowering Plants. And this topic that we are going to discuss today is pollination. Pollination. What is pollination? It is a transfer of pollen grain from the anther to stigma of a pistil, right? So that is what we call it as pollination. That is, the pollen grain is being transferred from where to where? From the anther to stigma. Is called what? Pollination. Okay. So types of pollination. So in our nature, we can say there are three types of pollination. One is autogamy, which is also called self-pollination, getinogamy, and xenogamy. So let us discuss about this one by one. So the first that we are going to discuss is about the autogamy. Auto. What do you mean by auto? It's nothing but it's a self, right? So the self-gamy, it's a pollination. Okay. The transfer of pollen grain from anther to stigma of the same flower, we call it as autogamy. So here what happens? The transfer of pollen grain from anther to the stigma of the same flower, right, is called as autogamy. The flower with exposed anther and stigma completes the autogamy. Okay, so how when the flower that is undergoing autogamy should have what type of flower? That it should have a exposed anther and stigma. Such flowers required synchrony in pollen release and stigma receptive. The plants, some of the example here like volva, that is oxalia, and commelina, that produces two types of flower. So what are the two types of flowers can be seen in the nature? That is chasmogamous and clistogamous. Now what are chasmogamous flower? Chasmogamous flowers are similar to the flowers to the other species with exposed anther and stigma. So here in chasmogamous flower, how it will be? The anther and stigma will be exposed. Or we can say that it is an open type of flower. So chasmogamous is what? Open type of flower. Now what is clistogamous? Okay. So clistogamous, they do not open at all. So it's such type of flower which do not open. So here you can see, so these are the chasmogamous flower and these are the clistogamous flower. Okay. So here the plants are not at all open. When the plants are not at all open, then what will happen to the anther and stigma? They will be close to each other, right? So they are autogamous. Okay. So when the anther descends in the flower buds, pollen grain come in contact with the stigma for pollination. So this type of flower will be undergoing what? Autogamous, because the anther and stigma are closed enough. Okay. So in that case, what type of pollination it will be undergoing? That is the autogamous. Okay. Now clistogamous leads to inbreeding depression. Now what do you mean by inbreeding depression? It is nothing but when the flower which is undergoing continuous self-pollination, and the flower which is undergoing continuous self-pollination leads to what? Inbreeding depression. Inbreeding depression means the quality or the products of the flower plants will be decreased. In what case it will be decreasing? When the flower is undergoing continuous self-pollination or the autogamous flower. The next type of pollination that we are going to discuss is about the getinogamy. What is getinogamy? It is the transfer of pollen grain from anther to the stigma of the other flower of the same plant. Okay. So in this case, the plant is same. Am I clear, students? So please make a note. Here the plant is same, but so here the plant is same, but what is different here? The flowers are going to be different. Okay, same plant, but of what? different flowers. Okay, the transfer of pollen grains from anther to the stigma of anther of the flower of the same plant. Am I clear, student? Okay, it is the functionally cross-pollination involving pollinating agent. Obviously, this type of pollination to occur, what is required? That is the pollinating agents are needed. But what about the genetically, whether it will be similar? No. The genetically similar to autogamy. So these type of flower will be what? Genetically similar to the what? The autogamy. So this type of pollination, we call it as what? It's a getinogamy. Now, the last type of pollination that we are going to discuss is about the xenogamy. Now, what is xenogamy? It is nothing but different flower of a different plant. Am I clear, student? So, two different plants where two different flowers where the pollination, that is the anther, will be transferred from one plant to the other plant of the different flower. So here also obviously there is a need of pollinating agents. Okay. Okay, what about the genetical similarity? Yes, it brings genetical difference. Okay, so this type of xenogamy, we can find the genetical different pollen grains to the stigma. So these are the three types of pollination that we have discussed. Now let us discuss about the agents of pollination. Okay, so the pollination to occur, somebody should carry the pollen grains, right? So who is going to carry the pollen grains from the anther to the stigma? So we have certain agents for this, like abiotic agents and biotic agents. Under abiotic agents, that is wind and water. And what is biotic agents? Like insect, birds, primates, arboreal rodents and reptiles. So these all act as a biotic agents. Am I clear, student? Right. The first abiotic agents that we are going to discuss here is the wind pollination. Okay, right. Wind pollination. This type of pollination is also called as anemophily. This type of pollination we also called as what? Anemophily, right? So it is a more common abiotic agent. So in nature, if we see, the most of the plant which is undergoing pollination is through wind. So that is why it is more common by abiotic agent. Okay. So the wind pollinated flowers often have single ovules. Okay. So this type of the flower which is undergoing wind pollination, they should have what? Single ovule in each ovary and numerous flowers packed into an inflorescence. For example, corn knob. Okay, so you can see the corn knob, the testals are stigma and style which wave in the wind to trap the pollen grains. You might have seen corn, right? So they have testals of stigma. And what do? They just wave in the wind. Why? In order to what? Receive the pollen grains. Wind pollination is quite common in case of grasses. So most of the grasses will undergo what? That is the wind pollination. So these are the grass where we can see the pollen grains. Okay. Ways for effective pollination. Okay. Suppose the flower which is undergoing wind pollination, what type of they should have certain adaptive features, like flower produces large amount of pollen grain. So in this type of flower will produces what? Large amount of pollen grain. The pollen grains are light and non-sticky, right? It should be what? Very light. Why it should be very light? So that it can be carried through the wind. And it should be non-sticky. Yes, obviously it should be non-sticky because it should not stick on to any substratum. It should easily carry through the wind. Then they often possess well exposed stamen. Yes or no? Why? In order to, like, for easy dispersion of pollen into the wind current. So it should have well exposed stamen. It should have a large feathery stigma to trap airborne pollen grains. How should be the stigma? It should be large and it should be feathery. Okay, so these are the some characteristics of the flower that is undergoing what wind pollination. Once again, we'll have a small recall. It should have large amount of pollen grain, light, and the pollen grain should be what? Light and non-sticky. It should be well exposed stamen and large feathery stigma to trap airborne pollen grains. Right. Now coming to the next one, that is the next agent is water. Right. Okay, the pollination by water is called as hydrophily. What do you call it as? Hydrophily, right? It is quite rare because mostly we can see terrestrial plants comparatively to the aquatic plants. So that is why, as I already told, that in nature the most common is wind pollination, and the water pollination is quietly rare. It is limited only up to how many genera? Only up to a 30 genera. Okay, and we can mostly, it can be seen in monocotyledon. Yeah, some example you can cite here is Welsonaria and Hydrilla. Right, so Welsonaria, Hydrilla, where do they grow? In a fresh water, and Zoastera grow in a marine sea grasses. Okay, but in lower plants, water is regular mode of transport for male gametes. In 11th standard, you might have learned when we were discussing about bryophyte and pteridophyte. Yes or no? So they actually, they complete their, like, is limited. Here it is limited because they need water for transport of male gametes and fertilization. Yes or no? So here obviously there is a need of water for water. So they are completely dependent upon the water for their pollination to occur. So now we are going to discuss about the pollination, how the through water, how the pollination takes place in Welsonaria and Hydrilla. So first let us discuss about the Welsonaria. So Welsonaria and the seagrass or Zoastera, the pollination is totally different. Okay, so what way it is different, let us discuss. So in case of Welsonaria, the female flower reaches to the surface of the water by a long stalk, and the male flower or pollen grains are released to the surface of the water, and they are carried by the water current and reaches the female flower. So here in this case you can see, so the flower which is present under the water are the male flower, and you can see a long stalk, right? So here you can see a long stalk. It is nothing but it's a female flower, right? So this one is the male flower and this one is the female flower. So in this case, the male flower releases the pollen grain, and these pollen grain reaches the surface of the water. What about the female stalk? They reaches to the surface of the water, and through the water current, the pollen grain will be reaches to the that is the female flower. Am I clear, students? So this is how in case of Welsonaria the fertilization takes place. It's very simple. So once again I'll just repeat. The male flower will be submerged inside the water and they releases the pollen grain, and these pollen grain reaches to the surface of the water, and the female flower with a long stalk reaches to the surface of the water in order to what? Receive the pollen grain. What about the seagrass? How it is totally different in case of seagrass. The only difference that you can see here, in case of seagrass, both male and the female flowers are submerged. Okay, so they are submerged inside the water, and the male flower releases the pollen grain, and the female flowers will receive the pollen grain through the water current. So here the pollination takes place. So what is the difference you can see in both the cases is, in Welsonaria you can see it is the pollination taking place on the surface of the water, right? So here on the surface of the water, and in Wilson area it remains submerged inside the water. So this is what is the difference between water pollination, that is in case of Wilson area, and seagrass. Now we are going to discuss about the this is here you can see the picture, right? What about the pollen grains? The pollen grain that is undergoing water pollination, these pollen grains are covered by mucilaginous covering so that it can be protected from watering. Am I clear, student? Okay. Now, one exceptional case that we can see here, even though water lily and water hyacinth, so these are all growing in the water, even though they are growing in the water, but they does not undergo water pollination, or they does not undergo hydrophily. What is the reason behind this? Sometimes you can expect 2-mark question, even though water lily and water hyacinth or lotus, even though they grow on the water, but still they don't undergo hydrophily or pollination by water. What is the reason? Because these flowers are emerged above the level of water. Okay, so these flowers are what? Emerge above the level of water. So they will undergo what? Entomophily and anemophily. Entomophily and anemophily. So they will undergo a pollination by wind as well as insects. Am I clear, student? Right. So one thing that you have to remember, the pollination that is taking place through wind and water, they don't have colorful flowers. Right. We'll move on to the next topic, that is agents of pollination through animals. Okay. So this animal pollination or the pollination through animal, it is used by majority of flowering plants. Like for example, bees, butterflies, beetle, wasp, ants, moths, birds, bats, primates, okay, rodents, reptile. There are so many examples that you can see in your NCERT, right? So in your NCERT, these examples are being given. So please, MCQ point of view, you can memorize all these examples. Now, the pollination by insect, we also call it as what? Entomophily. Okay, so anemophily, that is through wind, hydrophily is through water, and entomophily through the what? That is through animals, the pollination by animals. Okay, so the often flowers of animals pollinated plants are specifically adapted for particular species of animals. Now we are going to see some of the features of insect pollinated flowers. Okay, so the flowers here will be large, colorful, fragrant and rich in nectar. Okay, so nectar and pollen grains are the floral rewards for what? Floral rewards for the pollination. As a plant, what the floral rewards will be given to the animals, that is the pollen grain, and what that is the nectar. Okay, right. The small flowers from the inflorescence to make them visible, right? Now, the flowers pollinated by flies and beetles secrete foul odors to attract these animals. Okay, just now I told that the flowers produces a very good fragrant, right? At the same case, the flowers also, some of the flowers even produces the foul odors to attract the animals. The pollen grains are generally sticky. So how this pollen grain should be? It should be what? Sticky. So here are some examples that you can see the flowers that is undergoing animal pollination. Okay, during this case, actually what happens? When the animals comes in contact with the anther, the stigma or its body gets pollen grain. Okay, so when the some animals, like for example bees or any other animals, when they come and sit on the flower, what happen? The no, like the body of the animals will be what stick by the anther. When it comes in contact with the stigma, it results in pollination. Okay, so some plants provide safe places like floral rewards to lay eggs. So just now I told that the plants produces floral rewards to the animal as nectar and pollen grains, right? But some of the plant, they provide what? Floral reward as to know, like shelter. They provide shelter to lay their eggs. For example, so one example that is given in your NCRT is Amorphophilus. It's a no, like we can say it's a no, like biggest flower of no, it has tall about 6 feet amorphous flower, right? The another very good example that we can see is yucca, though like it's a relationship between yucca and moth. Okay, how do they this yucca and moth are being benefited? They are actually mutually they are benefited. So suppose you have the ovary like this, right? Now this moth, right? The moth, what does it do? It will lay their eggs on the ovary of the no, like of a flower. So now here what the plant is actually providing, it's providing a floral rewards to lay their egg. Now the question is how the moth actually, like moth is benefited by laying their eggs. In turn, how the flowers are being benefited by pollination, right? So the moth helps in pollination. When the moth comes and sit on the flower, the pollen grains will be stick on to their body, and this moth, when they sit on the other flower, they dust their pollen grains. So this is how the moth and yucca, they have a mutual relationship between them. Okay, right. Now many insects consume pollen or nectar without bringing about pollination, and they are called as pollen nectar robbers. So these are the some pictures you can see here, amorphous flower and some insects that is undergoing pollination. In this video we have discussed about types of pollination, that is autogamy, getonogamy and xenogamy. Two types of flowers we have seen, chasmogamous and clistogamous flower, and also we have discussed about the types of pollination, that is pollinating agents like wind pollination, water pollination and pollination by animals. So thank you for watching this video. If you have not subscribed my channel, kindly subscribe it. If you have any doubt, kindly ask your question in the comment section. So thank you for watching this video. Thank you.